edition of the Cameron Files, exclusively on Tuesday nights right here on KGRAradio.com. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Hope everyone has their favorite beverage and is in their comfy chair and ready to sit back and listen to some great UFO talk radio. Grant has a wonderful guest on deck. Susan Collins will join us for the show tonight. But first, we got to bring in the host of the show. And I welcome, and I want all of you to welcome with me, Grant Cameron. How you doing, Grant?
Good evening, Reese. How are you?
I am wonderful. Are the leaves changing color up there yet?
They certainly are. It's starting to get cool. We like it. It's a big change. It's a pretty hot summer, so it's nice to see a little bit of change and have the four seasons.
Oh, I know it. I just love living in a four seasons environment. And where Robin and I live now in northern Utah, which we'll have some news in next week's show, more detailed news in next week's show about you coming down to see the new studio and your way through to Laughlin, Nevada. Yeah. And so it's going to be a big time, and we're looking forward to hosting you here for a couple of days and having some fun with our good friend from the Great White North.
Yeah, it's always nice, especially when you're up in the Great White North. If it gets cold, you can always go south to Utah and Nevada and Arizona and take a little break. So
just lasso a couple of geese and just come on down.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to it.
We love it, Grant. We love it. Well, is there anything new, anything you want to bring to the front before the show begins?
A little bit of an update. There's actually a whole pile of stuff going on, and I haven't had much time to sort of post. I was going to put it on YouTube or something, but a couple of update items. The October 9th show, I don't know how many people know, but there's been a sort of a major disclosure of TTSA documents. And I haven't heard anybody talking about them. I've asked a bunch of people what's going on. What do you think about this? And so October the 9th, I'm going to have 4 guests, and hopefully you can work this thing. We're going to have some talking heads. I probably won't say too much, but I'm going to bring on 4 people, and we're going to talk about these new documents that have been leaked into the UFO community, where they came from, what they mean. We have Lou Elizondo's resignation letter. We have a story about the woman on the Nimitz and her involvement in this whole thing. An interview with her is really fascinating stuff, and nobody's really talked about it. So that's one of the things we're going to do. And so we're going to look at TTSA, the government, and other inside players, and that'll be October the 9th. And the second item is sort of ties into tonight's guest, Susan Collins. I'll be speaking next weekend, not this weekend, but the weekend after, at the first annual Caribou Paracon Conference in 100 Mile House in the lovely province of British Columbia. And it's hosted by the Canadian Society of Questers, and there's a lot of Dowsers there. And so we'll be asking Susan a bit about this and about Questers and stuff. And I'm actually going to do a democratic lecture. I have so much material. I've broken it into 3 sections, and one is going to be on the disclosure, and one's going to be on music and the paranormal, and the third one will be, actually 4, my new alien disclosure plan, what I think the aliens are really up to. And then I'm going to do UFO medals. There's a lot of stuff, and I've got a lot of material on UFO hardware that from various places and what may be done at TTSA. There's lots of leaked documents, lots of rumors going on there. And because it's the Society of Questers and UFO people. The people are all over the map. It's not just UFO people. There's people who are into all sorts of weird stuff. And so I'm going to actually, before I start, I'm going to take a little poll and we'll see what they want to hear. And then the lecture will be based upon what the audience wants to hear. So that's basically the update. But I'm going to be doing 2 of these updates on this TTSA disclosure stuff. There's actually a lot of stuff going on in the background that people really don't realize. Whether it's being dropped by the government or whatever's going on, it's got my attention, but nobody seems to be talking about it. So I intend to talk about it.
Grant, that's fantastic. Let's see. We'll have the 25th. We'll have the 2nd. So we've got a couple of shows. We'll make more announcements on that as we get closer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that sounds exciting. That's, that's the typical Grant Cameron that uncovers these gems and when no one else is, when no one else is dancing on that soapbox, you're not afraid to jump up on it and
I have nothing
go.
better to do. I'm retired, Ray, so I got nothing to do.
I love it. All right, well let's bring in your wonderful guest tonight. I'm looking forward to the show, and it's great to have you back this week, Grant.
Okay, thanks, Ray. My guest today is Susan Collins. I've had a number of conversations with her. There's a big Toronto Alien Expo that takes place every year, and Susan is there, and she lectured and has a booth there. I've had a number of conversations with her, and just from her bio material from her website, and her website is Dowsers.ca, I believe. So she's from Canada. And Susan used to use dowsing to get past her own health crisis, which I'll ask her about, and is committed to sharing techniques she has learned from many teachers she has had over the years. She was the president of the Canadian Society of Dowsers from 2003 to 2006. She was named Dowser of the Year in 2006. She is a full-time personal management consultant and professional dowser who has represented a variety of international and regional conferences in North America, United Kingdom, and the Middle East. And also importantly, if you happen to be in the Toronto area or the Ontario area and you need to get married, she can also provide you an enlightened ceremony that she can do for your wedding, because she's qualified for that as well. So I'd like to bring on Susan, and there's actually a couple of Susan Collins. So we've got the Canadian one. We don't have the American one that's about to vote on the Supreme Court here, so we can't ask her about that. But we have the Canadian, and she's an expert on dowsers. And just as one more little tidbit that might interest Susan, my father was, he was not exactly the new age crazy person that I am. My father was a pilot for the Canadian government. And I remember this going back to when I was fairly young. My father coming home, he was a pilot with the Department of Transport, coming home with dowsing rods. And he had just discovered these things. And he was pretty skeptical about a lot of stuff. He used to argue with me about a lot of stuff. But he came home with these dowsing rods, and he was absolutely floored. He couldn't figure how did this thing work, and we'd be going through the basement and looking for the water pipe, and we were all over the place, and he just had this thing, and that's all he could talk about was these dowsing rods. So welcome, Susan, and let's get talking about dowsing and your sort of theory of how the world actually works.
Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. And I love the way you describe the questers as being into weird stuff. Because, I love the questers, and I've spoken out there several times. And that's actually where I had my first orb experience. This is like 2004, not even knowing what an orb was. And it was at 100 Mile House as well. Wow. And it was like right at the beginning of my exploration of interdimensional energy. Didn't even know really what that meant at the time. But we were, we had our lectures, and it's tremendous amount of fun to share information and stories, and you come together, you have some learning. And then after that, you go out, go outside, maybe you get into nature, and you take that intellectual activity, and then you start putting that into your body and into the nature and starting to integrate. So that's what happened to me back then. Wow. Somebody took some photographs of what we were doing, and that was my first experience of having orb energies present in the photograph.
Maybe you can answer for me about 100 Mile House, because it's such a small place. I'm thinking, how could you possibly have a conference? Like, I think it's like 5 hours from Vancouver or something. But
it's a long way.
It's a very beautiful place.
That's,
I guess they've got a lot of people who are into this kind of stuff in that area, because it's not really near any big city.
Yeah, sometimes teaching in the big city or having conferences in the big city doesn't work so well because there's so many conflicting interests. But with 100 Mile House, honestly, British Columbia, it's a huge province. Yeah. It's a bit sparsely populated, and people would drive 12 hours to get to that conference.
Wow, unbelievable. That's for American listeners. I mean, if you've never been to BC, they call it God's country. It's absolutely beautiful. It is. It's a beautiful environment, and this is going to be at a resort. I assume you were at this resort at 100 Mile House?
I think resort might be stretching it.
Yeah. Well, for the small town.
It's always where can you find comfortable accommodation and pretty good food and a place for people to meet. So we're not fancy city people when we go to some of these places.
Yeah,
but
for you and I, it's basically about going and communicate with people. It's really not about the sort of the where you're staying or whatever. Because as you probably know, I mean, everybody's up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and people don't really sleep, and it's
so
just one
fun.
conversation after another.
Yeah, and really the whole point of what you're doing and what I'm doing and the whole radio station is to find community, because I find so many of us are by ourselves. Maybe we have a friend that we do this with, but generally our family thinks we're cracked, as you said, father.
Yeah.
Dancing on the soapbox, and I guess that describes what we're doing. Although, honestly, I have made an endeavor in my life, even though I'm way out on the fringe, I make a point of appearing as normal as possible, so that when I deliver the information, people go, "Oh, she looks like a reasonable person." Maybe there's something there.
Well, you really didn't get started. I mean, into this kind of stuff. You had another life. So basically, go through your life, because you were doing the business thing and doing all sorts of other stuff before you got into this thing.
Yeah. Well, I was in the corporate world, and all about the money, but I was actually born, I came in, as I like to say, I came in clairsentient, which means I could feel things around me. So there's clairaudient, people hear it, clairvoyant, people see it, different sorts of knowing, intuition, natural intuition that we have. For me, I was clairsentient, and from the baby, I could feel presence around me, which just terrified me. So at first I thought it was all ghosts. I thought it was monsters. My first big fear in my life was Frankenstein, and I really thought Frankenstein would come in my bedroom window. Wow. I think a lot of kids feel that or are afraid of that. And then, I thought it was ghosts, because honestly, I felt them all around me. And then it wasn't until really to the last few years when I started my dowsing practice, I embraced, my gift. That many of us have, but I had it naturally, so I started working with it. And, I'm a ghost buster, and I say now I'm also an alien buster, because it's not just ghosts out there. I started finding interdimensional presence. Okay. So for me, it's never been about the hardware or disclosure even. For me, it's the exploration of consciousness with these other beings. And, I'm a full-time practitioner. And depending on who I'm showing up with, I might say I'm a professional dowser, I'm a well locator, or I can say I'm a professional psychic, but that tends to scare people, so I don't say that so much. But I'm in a daily conversation with other dimensional energy, whether it's alien, ghost, or nature spirits, or past lives, future lives, simultaneous lives. There is a host of otherness out there. We're in these bodies, and we walk around, and we're pretty fortunate to have that. But concurrent with our physical existence is a whole other existence. So that's where I spend my time.
So
just
when
communication with those beings.
When you come into the world, you're clairsentient. So what's your interpretation? Is it multiple lives? And did you get that gift to come into the world to do something with, or how do you interpret what you have when you come into the world? Is it a random world? Is it?
Well, that's a good question. And honestly, I've spent most of my life trying to figure that out. One of the symptoms of clairsentience I had, and other people probably have this too, was a sense of deja vu, where you experience something a second time. So you're walking down the street and, a combination of events happen, and that you've seen that before or not experienced it before. It's not as if something happens. It's exactly a full-on premonition. It's a full-on experience of the future in the past. So I started trying to figure out how is that happening. And I have a crackpot theory for you, which if we're talking about weird stuff and dancing on soapboxes. So let's go back to Einstein. Yeah. And let's go back to black holes. So first off, Einstein talks about mass bending space-time, and that's pretty well proven at this point. Yeah. So then later on, we found out a black found out about black holes bend space-time extensively. And if I had imagine I'm holding a piece of string. Yeah. And I've got one end in each hand, and now I bring the ends of the string together, which would happen in a black hole situation with time and space bending. It's as if the ends of the string come together. So this thing that is in the future, actually on the time frame, I now experience in the past, and then the black hole passes off, and time straightens out again. So I actually think, and I think some scientists are talking about this, that there are minuscule black holes. It's not just something way out in the outer regions, that there are anomalies, space-time anomalies, gravitational anomalies that can bend space-time. And that is how I explain deja vu. And I've also, I don't believe in anything. I only experience things and then base my facts on that. Okay. And let's think about Mozart. How the heck did Mozart at 4 years old do all those things? The many examples of protege, of genius, many examples of in different cultures where reincarnation is accepted, that a child will recognize his former family, where he lived, where she lived. So in some cultures, not so much North American, there's a strong sense of reincarnation. So I just figure that's about the only thing that's possible, and that as we go around on the cycle of life and death, you learn a few things as you go, and with a certain level of consciousness, you can remember them. So it's that my motto at this point is take the wisdom from the past and the future. You don't try to recreate it, but what did we learn in the past? What lessons did we learn, and how do we bring them forward without having to recreate things?
Wow. And you talked about experiences. Have you had any experiences that sort of you can sort of figure out what you did in a past life and how it fits into what you're doing in this life?
Yeah. It's this is the whole point of shamanic journeying. So I do a lot of the drum journey. You can call it meditation. Very often we use a drum, and we entrain the drum. Pardon?
Who's we? Like what kind of system? Because I do some writing on this system of this ability to get into the zone. So what exactly what system are you using? How do you do it?
Well, in my day-to-day life, I just use Dowsing, actually.
Okay.
For first steps, like if people have never done anything, then working with, say, somebody drumming or doing meditation or, guided meditation is quite useful. But I've been, I now am a full-time dowser. I have a method which I use to connect into subconscious and superconscious and maintain activity in all my brainwaves. So the thing with a shamanic journey often, or meditation, you lose your conscious brainwave. So you go off in some place, it's lovely, and you come back, you're not sure exactly what happened. So this is a brainwave training that using dowsing, and we could even, you could say it's a form of self-hypnosis perhaps, but we never lose consciousness and control. And this is super important, dealing with aliens or dealing with ghosts or whatever it is, that we maintain our sovereign beings. I always know who I am, and I am in control. And one thing, with all the alien interaction that I do, and I do this for my clients as well, is that they often present themselves in not their true form. So to me, this is unacceptable. So many of my clients, and this is not based on religion, and this is not to disrespect any religion, but I work with a lot of Christian people, and many of them will see an archangel. Archangel Michael came to me, and this is what happened. So it is my belief that there are, in fact, conscious energies. Orbs are kind of a symptom of that. It's an indicator that these things are out there. But these conscious energies will telepathically rifle through our memory bank and find an image that is acceptable to us. So if we're Christian, we see Archangel Michael, then we relax. if they want to, they have come back. Aliens have presented to me as my dead mother, which,
Wow.
I just find that's very rude. So because I do ghost busting and past life communication, in fact, my whole family, my kids, my sister, and myself, we all saw my mother after death in different forms. But, I know she's okay, and, she's fine. And before I do an interview, or, I've written the book, Meet Alien Energy with Dowsing, I will interview different conscious forms that I sometimes will seek them out, but usually they're just kind of hanging around. And one day I'm on the porch and I'm saying, okay, well, like, what do we need to know? What's new? Just as your host asked you, what's new with you?
Yeah.
So I say to the alien community, what's new? And this thing comes in and it says, oh, I'm your mother and I'm not good. And I say, no, you're not my mother, And then it changed. Okay, well, I'm something else. So it's like, some of them, I hate to say this, some of them aren't that smart. But there's, and it's in no diss to the aliens either. And one thing I also like to say about the alien groups, whatever they are, that I don't support classifying them by what they look like or where they're from. So a lot of people say I'm, Pleiades or Andromeda, or, they look like this, they look like that. But classifying beings on where they originate and what they look like, honestly, is a form of racism, as far as I'm concerned.
Right on.
Yep.
Right on. Yeah.
Yep.
Are they in a physical, or first let me ask you, how do you know, say it's not your mother, like say if your mother were to come, is it possible you can interact with your mother, or how do you know it's your mother and it's them?
Because I'm dosing daily, so
yeah.
I use protocols daily, and the objective there with my interactions basically is to be in a state of grace 24/7, even while I'm asleep, so that there's no kidnapping that goes on. But there's a series of questions you can ask. And the fact that, as far as my mother goes, in that specific example, I'm in touch with her enough to know that she's fine. And if she had trouble, I would be dealing with that on her behalf. So this thing comes in and says, oh, things are terrible. I know they're not terrible, that she's fine.
Yeah. Are you able to use dowsing to talk to disincarnate entities?
Yeah, disincarnates. Yeah. So, and in fact, I have a protocol, and if any of your listeners want a free copy of it, it's a 2-page PDF. You can send me an email with protocol in the subject line, and I'll send that out. So it's Susan@Dowser.ca, and the website is Dowser.ca, singular, Dowser.ca. And if folks also want, I'm leaping ahead here, but I can also send a free page on how to photograph orbs. And what was the other thing? And how to dose. So I'm set up as a teacher to share what I know.
Yeah.
And a lot of that involves freebies. I also have a YouTube channel. If you go into Dowser.ca, go into my front page, you'll see a YouTube channel. And there's about 35 YouTubes on there, many of them having to do with alien stuff, how to dose, protocol, healing, all kinds of things. So, one person, as you know, Grant, we can only be in one place at one time. We write some books, but, we need to replicate what we're doing so that other people can pick it up and, each one teach one kind of thing. So I'm the...
Yeah, sorry, how many books have you written?
And maybe name
the books you've done. You've done a lot.
I've done a lot. I think it's about 7 at this point. The first book I wrote, that's the big book. You can see all this on my website, but I started off like a general reference guide, Bridge Matter and Spirit with Dowsing. And then I broke it out into a protocol. I've got one, Dowsing Triage, Finding and Fixing Energy Problems. I've got Meet Orbs with Dowsing, Meet Alien Energy with Dowsing, Get Happy with Dowsing, which is working with archetypes. So my practice area is 3 main areas. There's earth energies, environmental energies, and psychic energies. So the earth energy people, this is geomancy, it's feng shui. I've got a book, Dowsing and Feng Shui for dowsing and space clearing. Anyway, so there's a lot of, and the point of, talking about feng shui, that there have been people with these abilities, doing these things ever since they were people. I also do well locations. So I've got a book on water wells, what a dowser needs to know. So in addition to my alien and ghost busting, I go out and I find water with a pair of sticks.
Wow. Do you have that a lot of business in Ontario? Are they short of water, or how does this work? I bet you're probably in the sort of the rural areas.
Yeah, I'm north of Toronto, and I was out yesterday, I think, finding one, and I've got another one coming up. To be honest, there's very few people who are still doing this. Everybody's got an old uncle, or you talked about your dad being able to do it, but we need that next generation to pick it up. So I have a book on that, and it's all very inexpensive books, and I've got some YouTube on that too.
Yeah, I did know a guy. His nickname was Waterwell, and he's been dead for 20 years, but he was an old guy. So in a water well thing, how do you know, are you 100% accurate when you're doing your water wells? And how do you know how deep the well is? Can you go just a little bit into?
Sure, because it's the same principles. Once you use a dowsing protocol and you get into the energy, it doesn't matter whether it's earth energy, the water, conscious energy. So here we go. Moving water underground sets up electromagnetic radiation.
Okay.
So as a dowser, I can detect variations in subtle energy. So this, whether it's a ghost bust or an alien bust, but moving water underground sets up an electromagnetic energy. So I make sure for example, the dog fence is turned off, cattle fence is turned off. I take account of where the hydro lines are, because buried hydro lines also set up electromagnetic energy. So I go on the property, I talk to the folks, and I find out where's the septic, where's the this, where's the that. And then I basically go blank. And I think one of the hardest things we do as humans is to turn off all the thoughts.
Yeah.
So it's just the blank slate. And then I'm just quivering, I'm just blank. And I set up the protocol. It's all protocol. So it's very organized. I can teach it. You can replicate it. I ask, taking all things into account, known and unknown. I have my dowsing rods, the little sticks that swing around, and meeting ministry regulations and potable water that doesn't interfere with anybody else's uptake of water. I say, please point to the most appropriate place to drill a well to meet the needs of this family, with a well that can be developed by the driller they plan to use with his equipment, and with a minimum requirement of probably at least 3 gallons a minute, something like that.
Yeah.
So I just read this program in. So first, I do my protocol. I actually, if I'm being honest, I also work with the directions. So this is more in the native tradition. That I begin, once I've done the protocol, I face east and I ask for the cooperation of the energies of the east, the south, the west, and the north, and then the southwest as well. So my other secret, I'm telling you all my secrets here. The other secret I have for finding water wells is that most of my teachers are dead. My human teachers are most of them are dead at this point, and some of them were very good water dowsers. So in the southwest is where my grandfathers are, and we call the dead ones sky dowsers. So I asked if any of the sky dowsers will help me find the water well, and if I get a yes from one of them, and these are old friends and old teachers of mine, I say, oh, great. Will you go down there and tell me where it is?
Yeah. So
now I sound like I'm crazy for sure. But generally speaking, I'm extremely accurate.
Wow. Is this similar to, for example, Uri Geller? I think he now makes his living finding oil. Is there a sort of relationship to that?
It's absolutely the same thing. And one of my colleagues, some of your listeners have probably heard of Edgar Casey. He's another dead guy, but one of my living colleagues who is a water well dowser out in Napa Valley, And he says, thank God for dowsing. It pays the bills.
Wow.
So he gets all the water for the vineyards, but somebody got a hold of him to do oil wells. And they hired him to go off. I can't say where it was, but they hired him to go off. They drove him around, a county down there. And Rob Thompson, shout out to Rob Thompson Water Wells and oil location. He had a map, he had his pendulum, and he had making marks as he goes. They drove him around for 4 hours, and Rob marked on the map the places where there was oil. And at the end of that 4 hours, his client looked at him and it said, it took our geologist 4 years to tell me what you just told me in 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's a heck of a guy, and he takes a percentage. So,
it's good business.
This is just normal. So part of my thing is presenting myself as a normal person. These are normal things. The sixth sense, which everybody gets all excited about in the movies, it's just the electromagnetic sense. It's our birthright technology. We have the ability easily to detect electromagnetic fluctuations, and we just need people to be aware of that. As one of my dead teachers, Walt Woods, said, once you know you can do it, you can do it. So I try to stand up there and say, this is normal, we can all do it, and then people go, oh, I guess it's possible. Okay, let's give it a try.
Okay, a question on this, because when my father brought them home and I tried them, it worked right away. It seems like it's very easy to do, whereas if you're going to do, say, channeling or get music out of the higher consciousness or whatever, it takes some practice. It takes to be a medium. You can't just be a medium. But it seems that this, for some reason, like anybody can grab those two rods and walk along, and it seems to happen. So what's actually making it so easy? Because it's not like you have to disassociate. I mean, maybe if you're doing like water wells where you're getting very accurate, or because I remember the first time I did it, it sort of worked, and that's I think what threw my father off too. Is it was just so easy that it was doing it, and he was going like, this doesn't make any sense. Like how can this be so simple? It's like, so what do you think? You're using? I remember you talked about. The rods are like tools. They're just helping you. It's not the rods are doing anything.
Yeah, the rods just amplify what the body knows. It's like picking up a hammer or a screwdriver or something. But to answer, why is it so easy when you're walking along finding earth energies or simple targets, found targets? I think partly is because if you are, I don't want to say just finding water, but if you're dealing with a natural element of where is the water, where's the electrical current, and a lot of contractors and electrical engineers and all kinds of people use this to find the break in the wire. If you're simply finding a natural physical object underground, where's the big stone, where is the leak in the pipe, then it's kind of straightforward. Once you start dealing with other consciousness, then it gets trickier because consciousness is tricky. Yeah. And, in the Ouija board, let me just say this about that it can be an extraordinarily dangerous tool because it's often given as a toy to children with no training. And in my experience, it truly is a doorway through which non-beneficial consciousness can enter. So I never recommend people without training, with real proper training, using Ouija boards.
How many people in the world dowse? It wouldn't seem to me there would be that many. I mean, you seem to make it look like it's very important in life. You use it all the time, but what's the percentage of people that actually use this?
I think a lot of people, the people who consciously use dowsing is probably quite small. The people who follow their hunches and intuition is probably quite large. And I think you can make that bridge between intuition and hunches and dowsing, because hunches, you're really just accessing perhaps a subconscious part. Let me say for lost objects, for example, if people lose something, I always suggest to them that ask that a light be shone on it and that it be brought to a place that you'll find it. So, before I leave the house every day and get in the car, I say generally, let me know if I've forgotten something, and then I'll immediately remember. So I think I think everybody has the ability to access other levels of consciousness within themselves and outside of themselves as well. But how many formal dosers are there? It's hard to say. There's the Canadian Society of Dosers, the American Society, British. I was teaching in Japan. I was just over there. A shout out to Japan.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, no, I climbed Mount Fuji this year. Yeah, so I'm there. I just started going, I wonder how far I can go with this. And a lot of dowsing is working with intention. And back in the day, I said, you know what? I want to travel the world, make money, and teach dowsing. And within about a month, I was teaching in the Middle East. Wow. It's just like, whoa. It's shocking. It's shocking how well it works.
And in the Middle East, they're open to this, or is it?
Well, I had to teach it within the confines of Islam.
Okay.
So in that case, I had a contract, and I do say dowsing is not based on religion. It is simply the sixth sense, the electromagnetic sense. And my contract for my visits over there, because I went a couple of times, was I wasn't allowed to talk about angels, past life, and I couldn't touch a member. I couldn't touch a man. And if I did, I would be responsible for all expenses of the contract, which was pretty expensive.
Wow.
So it's a lot. So I rewrote my protocols and did everything within Islam. And actually, that was one of the books. Then I came back and I rewrote the protocols and did everything within a Christian context so that people can dose in Jesus' name. Wow. So we try to make this easy for people, or we just talk about divine source, creator, panpsychism. To me, panpsychism, a general term, everything has consciousness, and we can interact with that. And I do believe that when we are on the right path, whatever that is, if we, that we can talk about universal laws. Generally speaking, we're supposed to be nice to each other and help each other and all that. If we are doing that work, then the universe will line up behind us and help us. So I call it a spirit team. I call it beneficial beings, and I say my intention is to help people. And we can talk a little bit if you want about my recovery from health issues. Yeah,
use it for health as well.
Yeah,
I mean, you do a lot of different.
That was.
Just maybe go through some of your health. You can mention the health, but mention some of you do a lot of workshops on various subjects around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have one coming up November 24 in Toronto, Get Healthy with Dowsing. That's one of my favorites. I have another one in the Toronto area, Create Psychic Protection, because this is a huge danger for people who dabble in what we do, the UFO conference. I shouldn't say this, but I'm telling you all my secrets. At the conference, at a UFO conference I was at recently, 2 women came up to me in the afternoon, after my presentation in the morning, and they said, I got possessed by an alien during your talk. And it's like, whoa. And what I do is I flush things out. So I would suggest it wasn't so much that these people were possessed by aliens, but she was suddenly aware of the infiltration of alien consciousness within her own consciousness, and it separated out to the point that she was aware of it. And then by the end of the talk,
just to break in, what would the alien be doing? I mean, so it takes over her, and then what does it do?
Oh, it just does whatever it wants, right? Like we have the best planet here, planet Earth. We get to eat and drink and do all kinds of things. We get to influence, we get to have a life.
Yeah.
So especially at an alien conference, like there's another term I use to scare people, that we are all juicy morsels for certain levels of consciousness that recognize us. And there are some people without discernment who allow anything to come in and start to infiltrate and take over their consciousness. And I think that's fairly common in the UFO conferences. Like I've seen more than once, people stand up and then they're suddenly speaking in another voice. And it's like the alien presence, in order to be heard in the physical form, will sometimes take somebody over. It's all complex and it's all scary, but I think I think the best thing is if we're at least aware of the dangers around us. We can't be naive and just think it's not kindergarten here. It's the real world. I have another thought as well, that with our space program and our telescopes and all the stuff we're doing out there, the radio signals we send out sets up a stream, a channel of consciousness, that we're sending consciousness out, and that creates the pipe that consciousness can come back in on us. So a lot of the, and so, alien, what are the alien types? What are they? I categorize them as three kinds: beneficial, non-beneficial, and neutral. So rather than calling them by any species name or something, but there are ones that are just observing, I think. And I think there are some that want to help us. And in some cultures, they might be called angels. Because certainly if, in the Christian community, if you read the Bible, those angels, whatever those things were, they certainly came down and interacted with humans. And as well, of course, if you Google aliens and art, there were many instances of Renaissance paintings and earlier paintings where it does seem that there was physical alien forms on the planet that weren't shy about being seen. Now we mostly see, some people see full-on gray ships, but they very often hide in clouds. So one of my first experiences when I became aware of some of this stuff was, especially on the road to Ottawa, between Toronto and Ottawa and out by the Toronto airport, that there were very odd-shaped clouds, and I could put my consciousness on them. I would do my protocol, so I'm safe, and I would throw my consciousness at them, and I'm always start off very politely, and I say, "I see you're there. Are you here to help the earth?" And there's a second part to that question now. Are you here to help the earth for the earth's benefit or for your benefit? Because some forms of alien consciousness will support us and will help us, but ultimately, they're helping themselves. So we have to be really clear on that. On my way to the very first alien conference that I've done, and they're fascinating places, and I don't want to scare anybody off from attending any of this stuff. But as I'm driving in to the first conference, I'm asking, I do my protocol, and again, people, if they send me an email with protocol in the subject line, I will send that to you, Susan@Dowser.ca. But I asked the question with my pendulum, do you want to take over people's minds and bodies? I got a yes. Have you taken over people's minds and bodies? Yes. Have you taken over people's minds and bodies at the conference? Yes. Do you want to take over mine? Yes. And then I say no. So much of what we do is just bringing to consciousness awareness of what the heck is going on out there, and then defending ourselves.
Okay. One more question, then let's go back to health.
Okay.
Now I forgot the question.
That's
where do they reside? So a lot of people will ask me this question. You can hear, if you know the channeler Bashari says, we come to you in your dreams because now you're in our world, which would indicate they're in some sort of higher level of consciousness.
Well, a different level of consciousness.
But they'll be able to materialize into physical beings. So how do you define that? Is it all the same thing? Are all aliens able to manifest into a human being and then go back into an orb or whatever they go back into, or consciousness?
Excellent question. There's a term called walk-in. There's a book by Ruth Montgomery, Strangers Among Us, and some people, and there's still people who do this today. They give up their own soul and allow something else to take over. Some people do that consciously. I really don't recommend it. But other people, it can happen to people if they are unconscious. For example, if they are drunk, if they are stoned, if they're in a hospital, catatonic. Not so much when you're asleep. That's why they invented prayers before you go to bed. That's, you got to say that little prayer before you go to bed. But if you're catatonic, involuntarily catatonic, then you're a juicy morsel that things can come in and take over. But I've also met these beings and they come in on portals also.
Yeah, I was
So
going to
that's
ask you about portals and orbs. We got to make sure we do that. We only got about 10 minutes left. I want to make sure I get that. But
Serious? Oh my
don't
God.
forget.
Okay. You'll have to have me on again. Okay. Portals. I came across many of those. I recognized them because they would be a rural area, no cities, no cars, no buses around. And you see somebody walking down the road, not dressed properly, carrying weird things. And you go, where are they going? Where have they come? And then I don't. So yes, that's a portal. People, I'm going to start talking faster and faster and faster here.
That's good.
I guess the message is this stuff is real. It exists. We need to take responsibility for our own safety, for the safety of our children. I think my current, dancing on the soapbox is young men, particularly, who are spending so much time on video games that they're reaching a catatonic brainwave state that they are actually easily influenced by some of these things. When these things, we are the party planet, things want to come in and be here, they don't realize also we are the planet of pain. So then they get down here. Maybe the portal closes. It's a bit like E.T. Phone Home. Okay. These things come in and they can't get back. The way home is no longer there for them. And that's why I say I do alien busting as well as ghost busting. Because sometimes, and I just call them little critters, they get stuck here and they can't get back. So that's another thing, when I said, ghost busting is kind of rude, alien busting, but I facilitate their return to where they're supposed to be, into their dimension. Okay, let me quickly do health dosing.
Yes, yeah. And let's go. I'm going to ask you a question. What's your interpretation of how you got what you had before you got rid of it? Because you had a pretty serious condition.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis when I was 29. Within a few months, my hands were claws. They stayed claws for 23 years. I really lost the ability to walk. I had to quit my job. That's why I left the big, high-powered world. I was geriatric at 29, and I spent and that was 1982, something like that. Okay. So I'm 65 now. I'm in better health now at 65 than I was at 30. I mean, it's pathetic, but I'm so grateful. I started my journey like many of us now at this age, 65, and the walking elderly. It's kind of late to start that enlightenment process, but I was, kicked around the block at a very young age, and my motivation was my children. I had 2 young children, and I thought I have to get better for my kids. So I just started reading books. Back then, people didn't talk about it, but I started reading books, and I went to all the conferences and met as many people as I could, and perfected these techniques. Really, I was able. So it took me 5 years. I was on at the time prednisone, methotrexate, diclofenac, chloroquine all at the same time. I found dowsing. It took 5 years. I was also, my immune system shut down. I was gluten intolerant and salicylate intolerant. So I was a mess. Yeah. I found dowsing, and through constant practice, after 5 years, I was symptom-free and drug-free. And that was about 2005. I found dowsing in the year 2000, and I haven't been on drugs since 2005. And it appears my mission is to go around the world and teach this stuff. So I made the deal with the divine. I said, dear God, if you want me to teach this material, you need to give me the financial resources and the strength to do it. And so being in alignment with my soul's purpose has been huge in terms of allowing me to do what I do. So I'm drug free. I recently, was it last summer? I started with hearing loss, high frequency hearing loss. I went to the audiologist. They said, yeah, they documented it. And I said, so I did research on that. I found out that birds and fish can recover their hearing. Well, then I should be able to do that too. The way I did that was to stimulate the cilia, C-I-L-I-A, inside my ear, because that is that's the physical thing that helps us hear. So I had a little bit of tinnitus. I got rid of the tinnitus. I restored my hearing. But then just the other day, I noticed my hearing's going again. And I realized, I can't just do it once. I have to continually stimulate the cilia, continually stimulate my body's self-healing systems. It's not like a one shot. That's why I said earlier, be in a state of grace for 24/7. Align yourself with the divine source and really just do the best you can. And forgive ourselves for being human, because that's all we can do.
Okay. Back to the disease. So you with the disease, you get the disease. Was that part of your soul contract or something? Because you wouldn't have dowsed if you hadn't had the disease, correct?
Yeah,
you never would have discovered dowsing.
I think that's true. I would have been really rich at the time. I was going to be president of AT&T, so I was doing prototype internet systems in 1979. So, like, I'm really early on. Yeah, I was applications developed. I was about the first computer graphics artist in Canada. One of my first titles was applications development. I was doing apps, doing that whole thing, and I loved it. And then it all had to stop. So, maybe that was the only way to stop me was, and I think that is a good point, that when we are facing physical challenges in our lives or other types of challenges, we can ask ourselves, well, what is it I'm supposed to be doing? Maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this thing. Maybe there's something else that would serve me better and serve other people better. So I would say if we can find something to do in service that helps people, then that will bring about our own healing. Beautiful.
Okay, a couple minutes to go. So you got two to go here. And the orbs, you wrote a book on orbs. I need to know about your interpretation. What are orbs? Are there actual faces in there? And the other one I want you to do is shadow figures, which is becoming a sort of a big topic now again.
Okay, and all in 2 minutes. Okay, go.
Oh, well, we got maybe 3 minutes.
Okay. So orbs, orbs, they are, my first definition, they are energy phenomena. They are conscious because they can choose to come and go. They are interactive because I can call them in. I wondered for a long time what their purpose was. I now suspect it's a form of softening us up. Who can be afraid of a fluffy little orb? That's So the orbs. So the orbs. We know the circular plasma form, the circular form, membrane form. Those things break open into plasma, free-form plasma, and then they can assume shapes. So they can take on the shape of a human or anything else whatsoever. And the orbs are also nature spirits. We generate orbs with our emotions. If you see two people that love each other, there'll be orb energies over the heart. I've taken pictures of nature spirits. There's the pine tree out in the back, or the grass, or over the dog. So it is a form of energy that is now visible. And I think it is preparing us just to be a little more comfortable.
And why now? In this time?
Why now?
Well, because we only have had them since digital cameras and stuff like that.
Well, they do go back to print cameras, but before, like back in the Renaissance and Middle Ages and stuff, these energies were presenting in full form spaceships and all the things you see in the art. And then we, because our culture is very fear based, we started, oh my God, an alien, and you go into fear state. Yeah. So an orb, little fluffy orb, who could be afraid of that? So I think it's starting to make us a little more comfortable. Oh, what is that? What else is out there? So we're asking more innocent questions, and not from a fear base, but from I love it. I love that thing.
Beautiful. Okay, and lastly, shadow figures. What's your take on shadow figures?
Okay, so we also... 1 minute. Okay, so our brainwave frequencies, we all resonate at certain frequencies. When we resonate with the frequency of the alien, the ghost, the orb, or the shadow figure, then we see that thing. Using orbs as an example, some people take pictures of yellow orbs because that's their frequency. Some take pictures of red because that's the frequency. If you go into a frequency state that resonates with an existing consciousness that shares that or a similar frequency, then you will be perceiving each other. And in fact, the word from science we can use here is quantum entanglement. So let's say, and we know from quantum physics that any two particles that were ever in proximity, what happens to another influences the other. And I think there's some movies. This is starting to be a very hot topic. So it could be that a shadow figure at some level has a quantum entanglement relationship with you, and that the certain thought forms or frequencies that the individual goes in can resonate with something else. Also, we have solar storms, of course, which we need to look at spaceweather.com and find out when these solar storms are coming. And that kind of whacks out all the frequencies. So like things can shimmer in a high fluctuating electromagnetic field. We can have a sense of shimmering. And there's the God helmet, Dr. Persinger, you may know of that, the football helmet runs electromagnetic current across the helmet, and people experience God or the devil. So Beautiful. In states of high fluctuating electromagnetic frequency, we can see shadow figures or who knows what.
Beautiful. You've got a million pieces of information. I'll bring you back on again.
Oh, great. I'd love to.
I'm honored to have talked to you. You were very enlightening, and let's do it again. Thank you very much.
All right, Grant.
Beautiful, Susan. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Cameron Files with Grant Cameron. Any rebroadcast or duplication of this program or program content without express written permission from the KGRA DB is strictly prohibited. The Cameron Files, in direct cooperation with the internet website presidentialufo.com.